time of the beginning of the First World War, 1914 to 18, there was comparative calm among the Assyrians. The Russians encouraged divisions among the various Christian groups. They were very much against the evangelical Nestorians who refused to come to the Russian Orthodox fold. By the summer of 1912, the Archbishop of Canterbury's mission began to realize that they could not satisfy the expectations of the Syrians in supplying them their material needs. They expected money to pay the priests, to repair the churches, to give them protection from the Kurds, to pressurize the Turkish government to do its duty to them. The head of the Archbishop's mission, Reverend McGillivray, wrote of this conversation he had. With the Syrian archdeacon, to whom the mission gives a small present. And it goes on about the First World War. At the outbreak of the First World War in 1914 AD, most Assyrians were living in a large area between Mosul, Nineveh in Iraq, Urmia in Iran, and Van in Turkey, including Lake Van. This triangular area has 200 miles in each of these directions. Akkari was an independent province in Turkey. The Turkish government had kept the Assyrians in Akkari as an Asherit, or tribal, and kept it under the rule of the Maliks, the chiefs. The Russians, being Christians, had an eye on the Assyrians. In 1907, the Russians got Azerbaijan province. In 1908, the Turkish Revolution under Kemal Atatürk promised help to the minorities, but the Turks have forced Turkish into the Assyrian districts in Hakkari. In April 30, 1909, the Russians entered Azerbaijan. Patriarch Benjamin Shamoun met the Russian officials in Iran in 1910, expecting help from them. Russia declared war on Turkey. The Assyrians helped the Russians in two battles on November 1 to December 3, 1914, and so forth. On December 30, 1914, orders were given to the Russian army to withdraw from Urmia. Immediately, the Assyrian villages were attacked. On the night of January 2nd and 3rd, 1915, more than 25,000 Assyrians fled with the Russian army. The following days witnessed many atrocities against the Assyrians. On 2nd January 1915, the Russians began to move out, and 2 days later the Turks entered the town. After the Russian retreat, the Kurds appeared around Lake Urumia. The chief of them was Ismail Agha Simko, a former Russian ally. If the Kurds were Turks, they were then going to persecute them. On January 24th, 1915, the Turkish governor of Julamerk province's Hakkari Mountains and the Turkish consul Raji Beg arrived in Urmia with 1,500 Kurds, accompanied by 2 German spies, Naiman and Hommel. The arrival initiated new chapters of massacres against the Assyrians in Urmia. On February 24th, 1915, Paul Shamoun writes from Tiflis to Reverend F.N. Hiazel, which tells the sad saga of the Assyrians to the posterity. For the past 2 years or more, the whole population of the Urmi plain, both Christian and Muslim, had enjoyed a period of unusual prosperity. The Russian soldiers have guarded the roads so that the travelling became easy, and have in large measure restrained the Kurds from raiding Syrian villages. The Russians have kept the body of some 5,000 troops in Persia and have repeatedly given assurance to the people there that they would not be withdrawn from the country. Recently, a message had reached Urmi from the Tsar saying that the Christians of Urmi were to be protected at all costs. Rifles were served out to the men of Syrian villages where the people had volunteered to defend themselves against sudden attacks of Kurds until the Russian troops could come to their aid. Telephone communication had been established between all allied districts, etc., etc. During the month of December, they got many scares, for some Russians removed their families from Urmi and began to wonder if it would be safe to stay. Later on, to establish confidence, orders were given that no one wants to leave the country. From this time on, their troubles began. Two-thirds of the people of Urmi knew nothing of the Russian withdrawal until they actually saw the troops on the road. By that time, the Turks and Kurds were rapidly approaching the city and held all captive. They held all the roads. Kurds attacked the villages in front, and the Muslims from Urmi came to their help in the rear. The villagers then had to give up the fight, and the Kurds entered and burnt house, churches, as well as fuel and hay crops that last year. The young men were killed and the women carried as captives. The two villages of Golpashan and Charakushi were spared on conditions that they would pay a large sum of money and receive a Kurd as their village master. Some men arrived there. Tiflis from Urmi, they told them what had happened at Abdelakindi. This village, which close to Lake Urmi, was entered by the Kurds, who carried off all the inhabitants to the neighbouring Muslim village of Marangalovi. Here they were taken to the mosque and told they must become Muslims. The Syrian priest Kashamushi refused to enter the mosque, saying at this time of life he would not change his religion. The Kurds threatened to kill him if he would not comply. He asked for a few minutes to say his last prayers, and while praying was shot with 2 bullets and stabbed 12 times. His body remained in the streets for 3 days. His wife, who was inside a mosque and knew what had taken place, dared not leave to bury her husband. 4 days later, these people were allowed to return to their village. They found nearly everything had been destroyed. The whole number escaped that night to Kasari, village of 15 miles from Moran, where the Russian troops had halted. Here they were again forced to become Muslims. They were taken to the bath and purified. Their Christian names were changed to Musa, Isa, Hassan, and the like. After they were kept 15 days and were made to receive lessons in their new religion. The women had their locks cut short, and all were taught Muslim prayers. The men were not circumcised as the weather was too cold. 2 of the party escaped to the Russian commander and were sent by him to Julfa. These few facts show the grim reality of the situation. So they're giving them problems. This is the persecutions. Dinka was a bishop of Nochia and was transferred by the Patriarch Mar Benjamin Shimon to Soldos in 1914. He was captured with others and was shot dead in 1915. It is said that he was shot in the village of Chabash on the mountain of the Jews behind the church of Mar Kuriakos. He was the 17th bishop of Mar Dinka family. By the end of 1915, Kurdistan became a deserted place as the Assyrians had to flee for their lives. But Kurds in Bashkala began to persecute the Assyrian Christians. We read in John Joseph's book cited above. In the following few months, about a third of the Armenians, the Assyrians, perished from mere lack of food, clothing and shelter. Persecutions, more problems. On February 22nd, 1918, the Persians attacked the Christian quarter in Urmia. In March 1918, Patriarch Mar Benjamin Shamun, along with 48 of his escorts, was shot dead by Simcoe Aga. About the situation that follows, John Joseph writes. He writes about that. So you can see how much persecution they went through from different factions. Thousands of the Assyrians suffered. They were transported to Iraq owing to the famines in Persia. Agapatris commanded. When he was around, they suffered a lot. And thousands of the Assyrians suffered. They were transported to Iraq owing to the famine in Persia. Some would describe this tragedy of the Assyrians as the British betrayal. Supposedly they're supposed to, if they joined their armies and one fought alongside them, they'd get their land back. They were promised their land back. Afterwards, the British reneged. And that was also part of their thought that they'd been betrayed by them, by the British, that let them down. Still trying to find when they actually split. And the Old Testament in Syriac was printed in London in 1913 by the Trinitarian Bible Society. Some titles in the Syriac Bible were in the handwriting of Joseph Kelita. This Syriac Bible did not include the apocryphal books. Although the Church of the East approves the apocryphal books in the Holy Bible like the Catholics, this Bible did not include it because the Anglicans and other Protestants managed the Trinitarian Bible Society. Interesting. Now it's talking about Timotheus and his history. Okay, this Petros that caused great suffering for the Syrians. The English began to doubt the intentions of Petros. Finally, Petros severed his contact with the British and spent his last days in France. He was decorated by the French government. The consecration of the Patriarch Mar Ishai Shimon in 1920. Get ahead here to find when it's completely split from the Roman Catholic Church and refused to call Mary the Mother of God. Mentioning about W. Wigram again, W.A. Wigram. Reverend Wigram says Agapetros is behind Wolf's division in the Assyrian. Church. Although Petros had left the country, still there was a danger of division. He remarks all schools have ceased to work in the nation since 1914, so that a practically illiterate generation is growing up. The settlement of the 40,000 Assyrian refugees who threw themselves on British protection in 1918 has been, like much else in Mesopotamia, a botched job and very different from what was hoped for at first. Yet they reneged. In this report, Reverend W.A. Wigram writes that the Assyrians are unhappy with the settlement, but he writes that the British officers say a different story. In that letter, Wigram writes, British officers say we have done our best at enormous expense and trouble for a set of thankless rascals whom it is impossible to help. So Timotheus might have got to England, and the main purpose of this trip was to go to England to get help for the settlement of the Assyrian refugees. He had also planned to go to America to collect money for the Syrians. Timotheus met several important dignitaries connected with Iraq and India, and he wanted to solve the Assyrian refugees problem, as well as the question of the getting possession of the big church in Trichur. Okay. What's this? Timotheus approached the Trinitarian Bible Society with a request to get the Syriac letter printed. They too declined. In reply to your letter of the 29th instant, we do not print anything in Syriac or in any foreign language except the Scriptures, that is the Bible, New Testament, or portions printed from them. Our rules would not permit us to print anything in the nature of a private letter written by yourself. After meeting with different officials of the British government pleading for the Assyrians, Timotheus did not get any promise for the future of the Assyrians. Therefore he was getting impatient. It was at this time that an Assyrian named General Addai Petros Eloel, who had deserted Marshimon family, and historians in general, extended his right hand of fellowship. General Addai Petros de Baz had been honoured by His Holiness Pope Leo XII as well as by the Russians. He was living in France at the time. He came to London to reconcile with Timotheus and to plan joint programs for the Syrian cause. He wrote to him. This reconciliation had serious repercussions in the Middle East. The Reverend W.A. Wigram, who knew Addai Petros, wrote letters to the chaplain of the Archbishop of Canterbury advising against this reconciliation. Some paragraphs of this letter are interesting and hence quoted below. Still had problems with Addai Petros and the British government. Not getting assistance that they were promised, or what they were promised by the British government. Okay, it's quite lengthy, possibly, this video, and we may not get to where the Assyrian church totally abandoned the Roman Catholic. They split and refused to acknowledge Mary as the Mother of God, etc., etc. So we might leave it there, maybe do a part 2 because this could be quite lengthy. Let's go to a page where we can actually see this. As we said earlier, it's very faded, being an old book. Thaddeus still pleading with different parties. So, being quite lengthy, we may end it there. Hopefully you enjoyed this rather long video. If you did, subscribe to our channel, give us a like, add your comments, and share this video with all your friends. If it's really, really long, we'll probably cut it down to 20 to 25 minute parts, so it make it easier for you to view it.